Oh, Cancun. For most of the world, this place is the definition of paradise. Turquoise waters, white sand beaches, cocktails under palm trees, and luxury resorts where fun and pleasure are endless. But here's the catch. This supposed paradise is also one of the clearest examples of how modern society builds entire cities on exploitation, pretension, and short term thinking. Being here, I can sure attest that behind the glossy Instagram shots and travel agency ads, Cancun is a textbook case of what happens when you manufacture a city purely for profit, ignore the people who actually live there, and then wonder why everything feels broken. Now, let me tell you, if you're loaded in cash, Cancun can be exactly what the brochures promise. The resorts are enormous, the pools are pristine, and if you're staying in the famous hotel zone, you don't even have to look at the messy parts of the city. You land at the airport and you're whisked away in an air-conditioned shuttle, and then suddenly you're in a gated playground where your biggest concern is whether you want lobster or steak for dinner. Everything is built for you. Spotless beaches, perfectly manicured lawns, and staff trained to smile no matter how rude the guests are. In that bubble, Cancun certainly works. It really does feel like a utopia carved out on the Caribbean coast. For the rich, Cancun is the ultimate testament to the power of money to manufacture a perfect world, so long as you don't look too closely over the resort's wall. Because the moment you leave that bubble, the cracks start to show. Now, brace yourself for this. Cancun is not some ancient port city that grew organically over centuries. It's not a city with centuries-long traditions like Havana or Acapulco. No, Cancun as we know it didn't even exist until the 1970s. Most people would have never imagined this, but Cancun was literally invented by bankers who were commissioned by the Mexican government to go and search all around the Mexican coastline until they find the spot with the most potential to be developed into a successful resort town. That as part of a plan to bring foreign currency into the Mexican economy. They settled on a near-empty stretch of coast in Quintana Roo that was little more than a sandbar with a few coconut plantations and a tiny fishing village. Think about that. Someone drew a circle on a map, said, "We'll put a resort here," and then poured concrete until a city appeared. There was no gradual evolution, no natural growth, just a top-down decision to build paradise out of thin air. And at first, it worked brilliantly. As it was a niche destination, only high purchase power tourists could come in, but still in low numbers, which made service operations still manageable and somewhat sustainable. And suddenly, Cancun was Mexico's poster child for tourism. But cities born out of pure economic strategy usually come with a catch: greed and massification. And Cancun is no exception. To sustain this sudden boom, Cancun needed workers, lots of them. So people came from all over Mexico, especially from the nearby states of Oaxaca, Chiapas, Veracruz, Tabasco, and Yucatan, which coincidentally were and remain to this day some of the most impoverished regions in Mexico, all lured in by the promise of steady jobs in hotels, construction, and services. But this paradise had a dark side. These workers couldn't afford to live in the hotel zone they served. They were pushed out to the mainland, to the sprawling, chaotic urban area known as regiones. These workers lived in harsh conditions, with minimal infrastructure, excruciatingly long commutes, and little to no social safety net. Entire neighborhoods sprang up without proper planning, built as cheaply and as quickly as possible. They work long, grueling hours in the service industry, cleaning the rooms, mixing the drinks, and cooking the food for wealthy foreigners, only to return home to a reality far removed from the paradise they help maintain every single day. They are the engine of the Cancun machine, living in the smoke-filled boiler room while the guests dance in the ballroom upstairs. The same workers who make Cancun shine for tourists are the ones stuck in some of the most precarious living conditions in Mexico. Of course, like it wasn't enough for Cancun to just be a city full of contradictions and inequality. The social media era brought hypocrisy to a whole new level. Attracted by the city's reputation as a luxury getaway, the influencers swarmed in, turning the beaches and infinity pools into backdrops for their #LivingMyBestLife posts. Their feeds make Cancun look like the ultimate life goal, as if the city is one long glamorous vacation. But here's the thing. Influencers are great at hiding everything they don't want you to see. They won't show you the overcrowded buses that workers take every day to service those hotels. They won't show you the neighborhoods with poor drainage that flood every time it rains. And they definitely won't show you how precarious life is for the people who keep the paradise running. Social media influencers airbrushed Cancun into something it could never actually be. Cancun has now become a victim of its own success. Tourism kept growing at massive speed, but the city itself wasn't designed to absorb that growth. Infrastructure lags behind, traffic is a nightmare, and social inequality is on full display. And the saddest part is that the incredible amount of money flowing in thanks to all this tourism could have well-funded better living conditions for the people who keep the lights on. Instead, all that money has disappeared in elaborate corruption schemes across the many administrations that have run the local government. And I'm not going to talk much about organized crime here, because that is a whole video on itself, but I will just say that the cartels from the very beginning saw the opportunity in the booming nightlife scene, and violence became part of the hidden reality of the city. Add in corruption, poor urban planning, and a lack of long-term vision, and Cancun starts looking less like paradise and more like a case study in how unchecked development eats itself alive. What makes it worse is that the people living here can't escape this reality. On one side, you have billions of dollars in tourist revenue that attracted workers from every corner of Mexico. On the other, you have ridiculously low wages that were just a bit higher than what they could earn back in their hometowns, but still not enough to take them out of poverty. The fantasy is carefully maintained for outsiders, but the reality is unavoidable if you live here. So when people say Cancun is paradise, they're not wrong. It is paradise for the wealthy tourist who's here for a week. For everyone else, it's a city built on inequality and relentless exploitation. And that's why Cancun is everything wrong with society. It's the perfect metaphor for how modern capitalism dresses up failure as success. It shows us how beauty and wealth can be manufactured on top of systemic neglect. Cancun is what happens when we prioritize appearances over substance, profits over people, and short-term gain over long-term sustainability. Behind the turquoise waters and glossy brochures, Cancun reveals an uncomfortable truth. Paradise doesn't come free. Someone has to pay for it, and in this city, it's the workers, the locals, and the environment that foot the bill. Cancun is a monument to late-stage capitalism built on a foundation of sand and human struggle. This is the start of a series about the city of Cancun from the perspective of a local. This won't be your typical travel vlog channel. Instead, I'll be doing deep dives into more serious and mature topics that often don't reach the international spotlight, such as the rapid and chaotic urban development the Cancun experienced since its foundation, as well as the concerning societal problems that remain hidden from the wider public, the decaying state of its infrastructure and transportation networks, and even the rampant corruption and crime that affect this region of the Mexican Caribbean. Subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss out. And if you have questions about Cancun that you'd like me to cover in future videos, feel free to leave them in the comments. Cheers.